No.
Real estate controls
Everything around me.
All right, so Masta Ace.
What's up, man?
Man, thank you for doing this for me.
Absolutely.
You know, I know unconventional, maybe.
Listen, you did all the work. All I had to do was show up, so I'm not mad.
Man, but you know what? I really do love sitting down with the artists who I grew up listening to. As I told you off camera, the very first time I saw you in concert was in 2007 with Sean Price. Rest in peace.
Yeah, that one of my only pictures I have with him is from that night in Chicago.
Okay.
I remember that show.
Yeah, no, if I remember correctly, at that time I knew of you, but of course I'm younger. I'm just 37, so back then I think I was still 20 actually. And
probably
so,
more familiar with Sean Price at that time.
I was. Well, that's why I went. Yeah, because I knew about his work. But then that show alone, and I remember the energy level that you had during that show, and like, you know, how creative the rhymes were. And then of course I started digging, and then I started digging to all your whole catalog, and then to be sitting here with you now, like, you know, so many little years later, is like, you know, for me personally, as a, I guess, a newer fan, it's incredible for me. It's
great to my goal anytime I step on stage is to try to earn fans by my performance, by the music that I deliver, because I know there's going to be people in the audience that don't know who I am or not familiar, and so what I'm trying to do is win them over with the show, with the music, with the things that we do on stage. And I guess it worked that night, you know?
Yeah, it worked. Maybe want to drive 12 hours to come see you.
Word.
Man, so for you, I know you're from Brooklyn. Are you born and raised, and from what area exactly?
Born and raised in Brooklyn. The neighborhood in particular is Brownsville. Born and raised in Howard houses. That's the projects. Brownsville is a crazy concentration of housing projects. There's about 12 or 13 different housing projects all crammed into about a 2 to 3 mile radius. I mean, they're really all close together, walking distance from each other. So in those days when I was younger, we would walk from our project to the next project to the next project to see what was going on, because in those days it was jams in the park where DJs were coming out playing music. So if we heard, oh, they playing music in, you know, Cethlo, we're gonna walk across to Cethlo. If they're playing music in Brownsville houses, we're gonna walk over there. That's where Sean Price is from, Brownsville. So we would walk, man, and I had a friend that lived in Marcus Garvey Village, which was a little bit further past the train line. I would walk to his house and hang out with him. That's where Thurston Howell III is from Marcus Garvey Village. There's a few notables, man, from Brownsville. Steele from Smith and Wesson is from Brownsville as well.
What about MOP?
MOP as well. They're up the hill. They're a different direction, but they're up the hill. They were in Prospect Plaza, and then a little bit further up is Atlantic Towers. That's where the boxer
Tyson?
Shannon Briggs is from.
Okay.
Tyson, I don't know. Tyson wasn't from the projects though.
He's from Brooklyn, right?
Yes, he's from Brownsville.
Okay.
Tyson's from the Brownsville. He's up the hill too. I remember Shannon Briggs saying that he lived on like one of those streets, one of those side streets, like Sterling or one of those. I can't remember the street that it was, but yeah, Tyson's from the Ville as well.
You know, one of the reasons why I call these interviews real estate controls everything around me, because I mentioned to you about how hip-hop artists in particular have a large affinity for where they grew up, whether it's in their name, the album titles, bars in their lyrics, right. And just even right now in our conversation, you can readily identify, like, you know, with where you're from and all the people who grew up around you in the different housing projects.
Sure.
And so for Brooklyn, that part of Brownsville. So in Chicago, I'm used to seeing the high-rise projects.
That's what we have in Brownsville as well.
So like, you remember the image they were showing Good Times.
Yep.
So it was.
I related to that.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I love that show, is because I feel like I saw me. Those buildings, the elevator not working, like all of that stuff was part of our upbringing.
Man, so are those projects still up or no?
Yes, our project's still up. The only so Scoop Lover and where MOP is from, Prospect Plaza, those have been knocked down, imploded, and they built like 2 families or so. They built some other stuff there. Those are gone, but all the rest of the housing projects in Brownsville are still there.
Yeah, because probably the difference between New York and Chicago right now, the majority of the projects that people have known us for over the years, those are virtually all gone.
Like Cabrini Green is gone, right?
Well, the high rises, yes. There's like one row of or one street of row houses still left,
okay,
where they literally have police officers sitting in their cars on both ends, pretty much 24/7. The rest of those row homes are all vacant and they're fenced off. So, quick little tidbit. So I used to work for a TV station called the Big Ten Network.
Okay.
So if you're a college sports fan,
I am.
So we broadcast all the sports from like Ohio State, Michigan State, all those guys. So the office is right on the corner of Chicago and Larrabee, right where Cabrini Green used to sit.
Okay.
And so
those are office buildings now?
Yeah, so there's remember the company Montgomery Wards?
Yeah.
So it's the old Montgomery Ward building, and the Cabrini Green housing project started across the street. There was also, to talk about gentrification, one of the big towers that was down the street off of Division and Larrabee. There's now a Target there.
Oh.
And they were tearing down that high-rise project when I started working there in 2010. So there were some high-rises they were still tearing down. There were some mid-levels that were a couple blocks further east, and then before that were the row homes.
Okay.
So the out of all the row homes, 95% of them are fenced off, and they have one street where they still have people living there, and they have cop cars sitting on both sides of it 24/7.
So have they where they tore the high rises down? Did they build more residential homes, or is it just businesses?
So they're all residential homes, but of course, like anything, most of the people who were there got shipped out.
Got it.
So because whatever housing they were going to build was not going to be enough to house, because I mean, sure, because you're the
amount of people.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the projects that you grew up in, probably how many floors were?
My building was 13. Well, the buildings in my project, the highest buildings in my project were 13 stories.
Okay.
I guess this is before they decided not to use 13 as a floor anymore. But
yeah.
So all the taller buildings were 13 stories, and all the shorter buildings were 7 stories.
Okay. So I want to say Cabrini Green, they were higher, if I remember correctly. They might have been closer to 20, give or take. They were high. And so, and all those mid-levels are gone. We have some other ones called the Ickies that will probably sound similar to what you're talking about. Those are all gone too.
Okay.
You know, pretty much they kind of, and it's a big thing that happened in the city, because I always tell people who are super familiar with Chicago, Chicago is not really a black city anymore. Chicago's probably majority Mexican now.
Okay.
And a lot of people, when they see popular culture and they see our leadership, our mayor, and like other popular figures from Chicago,
right,
I think in their mind they still think about.
I do. Yeah. I still think that way.
Yeah. I want to say, if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say black Chicagoans like myself, probably anywhere between 20 to 25%, maybe at the most 25 to 30%, and then Hispanics and white make up the rest. It's almost a city of thirds, give or take.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just remembered another place I performed in Hyde Park. It was a outdoor festival event that I performed at.
That was a picture I showed you of me and you. Actually, yeah, I forgot about that.
2019 maybe.
Yeah, remember,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, when I reached out, remember I think when I reached out to his interview. Yeah. So I went to high school in that neighborhood about 2 blocks from there.
And that felt like a super black town or city or area to me.
Yeah. So that neighborhood is, like you said, it's called Hyde Park. That was the Silver Room Block Party in 2019.
Yeah, Silver Room, yep.
Yeah, that was a Silver Room Block Party, which unfortunately they don't have it anymore.
Ah, man.
Yeah, so that festival, and I'm sure it probably happened to other festivals here in New York, or maybe not official festival, maybe like the block parties you guys would have back in the day.
Right.
Me on the outside looking in, that festival was a victim of its own success.
It got too big?
It got too big.
Yeah.
Because that year you were there was insane.
They did say it's been getting bigger and bigger every year. There was a lot of people out there. I know that. That year, they probably had like 4 or 5 streets blocked off. They had 3 stages, I think. They had you and Marco Polo. Yep. They had some other good local artists who were there. Yep. They had some DJs who were there. I actually, when we get done with this interview, I can actually pull up video on my cell phone and show you. Actually, I have some footage of you. I would like to see it.
Yeah, and so, and it sucks because that was a black festival, pretty much. And it got too big, and that's when it was still free. That was 2019. COVID happened. They didn't have it for like 2 years. Then they had to move it to a different location.
That's what always, COVID killed a lot of things that were happening. Right. Then they had to start charging for it. And then, of course, the same people come when it's free and come when you're charging. Of course. And then it went from 1 day to 3 days, which just didn't work. Because, like, one day, hey, we got to go this 1 day. So, like, it's jam-packed, it's crowded. Because I can imagine how block parties back in the day in the Bronx, Brooklyn, I mean, all the boroughs used to be back in the day. Yeah, I mean, in Brownsville in particular, like, I mean, block parties are something separate from what we used to call jams. Mm-hmm. A jam was DJ from your neighborhood, brings his equipment outside, sets up a bunch of big speakers and just starts playing music and people come out. Block party is a little bit more organized. It's more of a community understanding that we're going to have this event. Streets will be blocked off, right? And you know, people would park their cars at the ends of blocks. But that wasn't typical for projects. That was more typical for like Bed-Stuy, those really nice brownstone streets. People would park their cars and block the street off, and then set up some music, and each house would have their, you know, bring out a table or whatever, have food and drinks, and so people on that block could come out and go house to house and get something to drink, get something to eat, lemonade, whatever. So it was a little different from the projects. We didn't do necessarily what we call block parties. They were more like jams, outdoor jams.
Okay, you know, so I've only been to Brownsville once. I'm more familiar with Bed-Stuy.
Okay.
Which I know Bed-Stuy is not what Bed-Stuy used to be. I know Bed-Stuy has changed rapidly over the years.
Yeah, I mean the brownstones now, you know, we're talking about probably on the low end 1.5 million and up, you know, and only people who have those type of means can come in and buy these homes in that neighborhood now, you know.
Is Brownsville still mostly projects, or is there also like some newer housing built over there too, or no?
There is a bunch of newer housing, but I'm of the opinion that Brownsville isn't going to get gentrified in any real way anytime soon, just because of its proximity to Manhattan. Gentrification is all about proximity to Manhattan, and so you're going to see downtown Brooklyn be gentrified very easily, which it has been, because it's literally like 2 train stops and you're in Manhattan, or in some cases 1 train stop, you're in Manhattan. Brownsville is a ways out. It's way east, you know, to the east, my brother, to the east. It's far out there. So I don't know that people are going to be that excited about coming that far east into the belly of the beast to live. But I'm hearing that there are some families that are starting to buy up these houses. I'm curious to see how far that expansion goes. I'm still skeptical, because with those projects they're still in the shadow of, you know, what could be, you know, a very dangerous situation. So we'll see.
Right, and then also probably I would imagine Brownsville probably still suffers from what different neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago go through too, just the reputation of it.
Yeah, it's huge. That's huge.
You know, because even like me, like, you know, me being born and raised on the south side of Chicago now, and I always give this disclaimer: I am not from the hood. Like I had a great life growing up.
That's
you know,
good,
and I think a lot of people who are not from Chicago, they hear South Side and they think it's just one big ghetto, and it really isn't. Like, you know, there are neighborhoods, there are neighborhoods just like this, even nicer. And I think people in their mind, they think that from where we're from, and probably even no different than where you're from, they think you step outside and bullets just flying around like mosquitoes.
Right.
You know, and I always tell people that, yeah, man, certain areas on the South Side are going to be hard to like transform because of their reputation.
Right.
You know, and probably different from the South Side of Chicago compared to here is that black neighborhoods in Chicago don't really get gentrified like they do here.
That's same as Brownsville, man.
It's more so like the Mexican neighborhoods, like they're the ones who kind of go through it.
Yeah.
You know,
they don't want to live by us.
Yeah. I've seen that happen too. When's the last time you've been back?
The last time I was in Chicago.
Oh no, I'm in Brownsville.
Oh, in Brownsville?
Yeah.
This past summer, this past August, they have it's called Old Timers Day.
Okay.
They do it once a year in the summer. I think it's the first week of August every single year. And basically this is my first time going there in at least 12 years. And they set up a stage. It used to be, each project used to have their own Old Timers Day. But what was happening was there were like shootings and things like that would happen at each one of these events. And so the police just felt like it was easier to do it all inclusive, one event for the entire Brownsville. And they do it at Brooklyn Recreational Center. And so they have it walled off in a way where anything happens, they got police at every corner of the event. So it's not like, oh, something's happening in this project, now they got to send police over there. Something's happening over here. So now it's all, and like I said, I haven't been there since they've done this. And it's done pretty well. They got a really big stage set up, and a couple, Curtis Blow performed. You know, he's not from Brownsville, he's from the Bronx, but he performed, and it was nice to be out there. I saw guys that I'd grown up with, some that I hadn't seen in many years, and some guys that I didn't remember because everybody's got beards now, everybody's a bit fatter now, got gray. I'm like, who are you? So, you know, but it was a great experience to be out there. I spent the whole day out there, man, and like I said, I enjoyed myself. I really did.
You know, I can imagine from you. I know everybody has like their big dreams when they get into hip hop. You know, as what do they say? Nobody gets in hip hop to drive a RAV4. Right. You know, so everybody has their big dreams going to hip hop. So you being from the projects in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and to now, I mean, you probably toured across Europe, you know, 35 times, and you've been to so many countries and cities.
Yeah.
Like, you know, could you have ever really imagined? No
way. Not from, you know, us in the lunchroom in high school beating on the table saying our little raps.
Right.
For that to turn into a 30-plus year career was not something I could foresee. In my mind, I was going to college, which I did. I was going to get my degree, which I did. I was going to become an advertising executive on Madison Avenue in Manhattan and write commercials for Budweiser and Snickers. You know, that's what I thought was going to happen for me. The music thing was something that was unexpected. And I just tried to take full advantage, and luckily some people liked what I did. Yeah,
because your first time going overseas, that probably was what, like a
91.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you're somebody, like you said, from the projects, from Brooklyn. That first experience going overseas, no matter which country you went to, now you come back to America. How did that experience change you and like the way you see things now?
Yeah, it was actually 90. I went to London. I had a tour in London. But the main show in that London tour was at London Arena, opening up for Public Enemy and EPMD. At that point in my career, I had never been in front of there was 20,000 people there. Up until that point, probably the most people I had performed in front of was maybe a few hundred. And to walk out into this arena in a country on the other side of the world, and for people to know my records, know the songs, and be jumping up and down to my songs that I made, like I didn't see that in America. So to see it there, it just put a whole different perspective on it for me. I started to see the world as a much bigger place than I did when I was growing up. And it made me realize that, okay, if you're not being felt here, you might be being felt over there, and that's okay too.
And not only that too, you have, you know, those people across the world who know your lyrics and they don't even look like you probably.
Not in London, they don't. I mean, no, that's not true. London got a lot of black people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, London has a lot of black people. But now when I'm performing in places like, you know, in France and Spain and Switzerland, and these people don't look like me at all. And they know all the songs, they know all the words. And some of these places like Italy, there's not really a lot of English that's spoken there, but they love the music, and in a lot of cases they know the words, even if they're not saying them quite right. They know the words. Yeah, I remember talking to a young lady, and she told me that she was in Germany, and her only motivation, well, maybe not her only motivation, one of her big motivations to learn English is that she wanted to know what Michael Jackson was saying. I heard that quite a bit, that a lot of people in Europe learned English from listening to hip hop music. That's how they learned the language. Yeah. And like you said, from something that was essentially created from Black and brown kids, like, you know, from the tri-state, from the Bronx, from New York area. And, you know, a lot of times kids from not the best of means, like, you know, kids like, you know, no different than yourself from the projects, or like, you know, kids like, you know, from rough neighborhoods. And to now think that an art form that you were a part of the creation, as far as like, you know, being a part of hip hop, is now, you know, I would still argue, you know, the most influential force in the world. It's by far the biggest genre in the world, by far. In terms of sales, in terms of streams, you name it, popularity, it's by far the biggest genre. Yep. So we're talking about how, you know, hip hop has like this big influence as far as how people see the world, but also in the age that you grew up in, American television also had a huge influence on how people see the world. So if I give you a quick tidbit about me, if you're growing up, I'm born in the 80s, raised in the 90s. You know, I learned a lot of things about New York from watching TV. Right. New York Undercover, Living Single, Law and Order. Right. And then put in the music when I started living here in 2011.
and I'm being.
You lived there for a while.
Yeah. So when I played for the Bears, the New York Bears, so I stayed. That was in 2012. The year before that, I was in Harlem for that summer. That was in 2011.
Okay.
And no different than me driving here right now. I have my car, so. And I preferred having a car because it allowed me to explore.
Sure.
Because I wasn't just underground on the subway. I wasn't just limited to me walking.
Right.
And so it was, for me, I always tell people, if you're a hip hop head like myself, going to New York is like a Muslim going back to Mecca. Like you're seeing where everything's made. And I'm walking down streets or driving down streets or roads I heard about in lyrics. Or like, I'm seeing, the Van Wyck. Oh, I know about the Van Wyck. They say that, the FDR, yeah. So it's like, it was almost like it brought things to life.
Right.
And even for you, you mentioned off camera that you had a similar experience like that growing up and watching American television about Chicago, right?
Watching Good Times. Seeing those at the beginning of that show, like as a young kid, I didn't have a concept of, they're not actually filming in those projects, but when you see the camera pan Cabrini Green houses at the beginning of the show, you don't think that you assume, because they want you to assume that when they're in that apartment, they're really in those buildings and it looked that way. So one of my first times in Chicago, I think it was '93 when my album Slaughterhouse was out, and we were there for a promo show or a show, and I told the promoter, yo, I want to go see what I call them the JJs. Where's the JJ projects? I want to go see the JJs. The promoter's like, all right, I'm gonna take you out there. And we went at night.
Oh yeah.
We went at night. And so the thing about it was when he took us there, we pulled over for a minute. He was super nervous. Like, he's like, take your hat off, take your hat off. You can't wear your hat like that. I'm like, what? All right. So we're sitting in the car, and there was a elevated train station that went right by the projects. And
a L train.
Yeah. And so when I saw that, like there was a moment when I was looking at that it actually looked exactly like Brownsville. It reminded, I was like, yo, I feel like this looks like Brownsville. Like the tall buildings, jutting up above the train tracks as the train goes by. I'm like, this looks like Brownsville. We didn't stay that long, and we didn't get out the car. He was like, no, we're not getting out the car. We're not walking around, none of that. But that was like exciting for me to like see where the JJs, where Good Times was based out of, and that was a great experience for me.
Yeah, because I've had conversations like this about Chicago in reference to today's world. I was like, yeah, it's a real thing where people come to Chicago now, especially the younger guys, the younger fans of hip hop, and they want to see O-Block. They want to see like where Chief Keef and King Von, all those guys are from. They want to take pictures in front of the murals and stuff like that. And me from like the older generation, like, why would they want to do that? And I think about, oh yeah, when I was in New York, I did that. When I was in New York, I went to the Big L mural, I went to the ODB, I went to the Big Pun mural.
And you weren't thinking about, this it might not be safe. You just wanted, it's exciting. You wanted to see it.
Yeah, I've never been to Queensbridge. I have been past Marcy, but I don't.
Queensbridge is a quick ride, man.
Yeah,
quick ride. Right over to Queensbridge from Manhattan, right over to Queensbridge, Queensboro Bridge. As soon as you come off that bridge, make that loop around. The projects are like right under the bridge, right under the bridge.
Yeah, I think what people realize, no matter how different we all may be based off of where we're from and how we grew up, our nationality and things like that, we all will always have more in common than we'll ever have different.
Fact.
And so, growing up in a certain area in one city, like how you said how you grew up in the projects in Brownsville, and then you seen the projects in Chicago at Cabrini Green, and you almost had a deja vu, like you're feeling
familiar, super familiar. Yep.
And that's the thing. Like, I always tell people, we're all different, but we're all the same at the end of the day.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest things I've realized that's unique about the tri-state or New York in particular compared to Chicago, when it comes to Black people, it seems like I'm gonna steal this from my brother Torre. Torre said, I asked him this question. He said, "Oh no, I'm an RBG." I was like, "What's an RBG?" He said, "I'm a regular Black guy." He was like, in New York, we got West Indians, like people from the Caribbean or African, and in Chicago, we don't have that. Like, of course, we have the population. We have some of them,
right?
And that's what I really realized when I was living out here, is that I very rarely met another Black American like me. I felt like,
wow, really?
I felt like
we exist. We exist.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and
Southern roots. Yeah, that's basically what RBG is that your family, most likely your family was from somewhere in the South, which means that you were probably a descendant of slaves, and you know, if you weren't from the West End, because there's a lot of West Indian, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Haitian. There's you know, there's a melting pot here, man.
Right.
You see a black person, you can't automatically assume anything. They might speak Spanish, like, you know what I mean. So I really I'm an RBG too. My grandparents are from Memphis, Tennessee. I've traced my roots all the way back to great, I think, grand, and they were, you know, sharecroppers and then descendants of slaves.
Were you able to trace back which country in Africa or no?
No. This was just literally a genealogical search based on the U.S. Census that was taken way back in those days in the 50s and 40s. They were able to find census information of the names of your children, because in those days they would come by each person's house. How many people live here? What are their names? And they would write all of this stuff down. They had first names, last names, whatever. Who's married to who? How is this your first wife or your second wife? That's how they did the census, door to door. So all of those are on in public record at the U.S. Census.
And so, do you still have family in Memphis or no?
Yes, I do. Quite a few. Memphis and Nashville. Yeah, quite a few. And I was there recently. Right after 4th of July, me and my wife and my daughter flew out to Memphis for a family reunion, and I got to meet a bunch of people that were directly related to me that I had never met before, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, because there's also a very large Chicago-Memphis connection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you know, I'm in real estate, and also besides being in real estate, I'm also a big geography nerd. And so, if you look at the map of the U.S., when you're east of the Mississippi, you can trace through the highway system how black people migrated from the south to the north.
Okay.
So pretty much every stop, when you're starting at the bottom or the south of the country, going up either I-95, up I-65, and up I-55, all of those cities have big black populations. So like, for instance, I-55 goes from New Orleans to Chicago. So you have New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, St. Louis, then Chicago. All have big black populations. You go from 65, Mobile, Alabama, Montgomery, Birmingham, Huntsville, Louisville, Nashville, Indianapolis, Gary, Indiana. All those cities have decent sized black populations.
Yep.
Go further to the east. I-95.
Yep.
I-95, Miami, Daytona, Jacksonville, Savannah, Charleston, DC, Baltimore, Philly, New York.
Bingo.
All big black populations.
That's where my grandparents went. They went that way. Ended up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm always curious. So I know this might be out of your knowledge, but do you actually know why or how they ended up in New York as opposed to going further north straight to Chicago?
I don't know why they chose that direction. I have no idea, but you know, I did a lecture in Memphis about 10 years ago. They wanted me to speak about my roots in Memphis, and so I went back through memorabilia, which was a lot of stuff that my grandmother saved from her first lease when she moved into the projects. And I found a lot of things that really told a story, like the different pieces of documents that I found in my grandmother and grandfather's collection told a story, and I was able to figure out like when they last lived in Memphis, when they first moved to New York, the first car that my grandfather bought, what kind of car it was. I had the actual pink slip of the car that he bought. So I was able to tell a story. The only part of the story that I wasn't able to tell was what was the reason for them going to New York in particular. In those days, it was just like probably word of mouth. Like, where is it most prosperous for us to go, where it's not so racist? You know, how can we get away from the South and get to a place where we can just be treated fairly? And I can only speculate that that's probably one of the reasons why New York was the place to go.
You know, we talked earlier about how, you know, people people go where opportunity is.
Sure.
And that's just the way we are wired as human beings. Like, you know, back in the day, your granddaddy went west to California to go try and find gold because he was tired of being treated badly in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Or your grandfather and your grandmom uprooted everybody from sharecropping. They found out they can get a job at a plant or doing something in Chicago, New York, Gary, Indiana at a steel mill because of opportunity.
Right.
You know, so I've lived in the South. You know, now only for a year, but I went to Mississippi, which is like as southern as it gets. You know, like when you're driving down there, you go over the Tallahatchie River where they found Emmett Till's body. Emmett Till, actually, he's buried about a mile from my house where I grew up in Chicago. And so, you know, I've had this debate with people. You know, so I've lived in Mississippi. I've also lived on the Gulf Coast of Florida, New Mexico, which, you know, and also Alabama and Mobile, all because of baseball, though.
Right.
And so, in my preference, if I'm going to deal with racism or discrimination, I'd rather have it up front. And that's what I feel like the South is more like.
The South is definitely more like that.
Versus, you know, up north in Chicago. And a lot of people think that, like I said, that Chicago is just like, you know, a black person's paradise, and it really isn't. You know, Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful and happy to be there. I love it from there, but it's not all gumdrops and rainbows type of deal.
Sure. It's America. So, you know, I spell America with 3 Ks when I spell it. But what I will say is, yes, the South is definitely more upfront, and somebody like yourself probably prefers the racism. If it's going to be, if it's going to exist no matter what, you'd prefer it to be a little bit more subtle, a little bit more hidden. I don't think either version of racism is good, in my opinion, but being a native New Yorker, where we are extremely confrontational, and call shit out as soon as we see it or feel it, it wouldn't be good for me to be in the South, because that Confederate flag or that person yelling some shit off the side of his pickup truck is going to trigger me as a New Yorker to go, what's good? What the fuck you want to do? Which is not probably the right response, right? Because in the South, open carry, all these stand your ground laws, all this kind of stuff, like I could see myself getting into something that is unnecessary.
Yeah,
right?
you can see something going left real quick.
Real quick, because of my reaction to stuff. My wife is the same way. We fly off the handle when we feel disrespect. So I don't know if it's the right thing to say that I would prefer it to be more subtle and more hidden, but I know that for my reaction and what it's going to be, that's the best way to go. So that's why I've always said, like, I don't think I can live in the South. Places like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I'll be able to exist. I was recently in Memphis for a family reunion, and I was online at a supermarket, and there was 2 white guys in front of me online, their shopping cart. They were clearly dressed like with the hunting stuff on, like they were out in the woods or whatever, probably shooting. And, you know, they saw me get in line behind them, and I got a look. There was no words. It was just a look, not a smile, not a, you know, hey, how you doing? It was like literally like a look. And I felt it, and I was like, oh, these dudes, I know what they on. So maybe it was better to know what they were on. I prefer not to get that look. I prefer a friendly vibe. You know, when we in Jersey, when we in New York, if we in line, you see somebody, you know, you might give them a nod or whatever. But I felt it. That's what I'm saying. And this was in I said Memphis. This was actually in Nashville. But I felt it, and I knew what it was. I knew where I was, and I left it alone. There was no interaction, so there was no reason for me to react or respond, but I knew what it was. I was aware of it. I didn't like it. I didn't like how I felt.
You know, funny, you know, so with me talking about discrimination and preferring it to be up front. So I grew up in a neighborhood, so it's called Beverly. And back when my dad and my mom bought their first house, like in 1983, my dad said they were still burning crosses on people's yards. 83. Yeah. I mean, you gotta think, well, in reality,
I believe you.
15 years after the civil rights movement, so I mean,
it's not that far removed,
right? And so, you know, it was a upper middle class white neighborhood. And the thing about the city of Chicago, if you work for the city, you have to live in the city. So teachers, cops, union workers, the whole 9 yards.
That's the rule in New York too, but many don't follow it.
Right. You know, but I don't know how it is in New York, but like I've definitely heard some people getting popped in Chicago for not following the rule and losing their job.
I'm sure it happens.
Yeah.
Most of the white cops that work within New York City, they live in Long Island. Some of them live in Jersey. And they have their fake address, and then they have where they really live.
Right.
And they do it.
You know, so in that first part of Beverly, now Beverly is, you know, they always talk about how Chicago, if you want to see how segregation in real estate was perfected, to look at Chicago.
Redlining, crazy.
Yeah,
same way.
Yeah, redlining, but I guess in Chicago, compared for whatever reason, compared to other cities, it was we didn't suffer from segregation, we suffered from hyper segregation. So literally, like, if you tell me, because we're not just segregated by race, also by nationality, and in some cases even religion. Like if I meet somebody who's a white Irish Catholic, and they're from the South Side of Chicago, there's only like 2 or 3 neighborhoods they could be from. Be from Beverly, where I'm from, Mount Greenwood, Bridgeport. And that's about it.
Right.
If they're older, maybe like Garfield Ridge, maybe, you know, but for the most part, you can kind of narrow it down.
Right.
You know, so the first house we lived in, you know, it was all good. We moved to another house in Beverly, but it was further west into Beverly, where it was mostly all white people. And when we first moved in, I was 10 years old. The neighbors immediately told us that, hey, your next door neighbor, they said she is actually legitimately crazy and she's racist. And they're like, you know, the mom's like, hey, like, you know, tell your kids, try to ignore her. Like, you know, we're telling like she's nuts. And when I tell you, this lady was not only a racist, she was a dedicated racist. Like, we had to always leave out of our house to walk through our backyard against the garage. Her house didn't have a third bedroom on the back. She had a back porch. She would pop out on that back porch every day. You niggers, you fucking niggers, you don't deserve to be here, all that type of stuff. She would talk about the Civil War.
Every day.
Every day.
And you were how old, 10?
I was 10 when we moved there. She died when I was 15, if I remember correctly.
So from 10 to 15.
Every day.
You had to hear this. And you prefer this type of racism.
I got used to it. Well, when I tell you, I got so used to it, it was just kind of like, that's like now, when I hear black people complain about, oh man, like, you know, they call me a slang word, and I'm kind of like, that's it? Like, this lady was talking about, you know, how we should be lynched, and I mean, she was really like, I mean, the lots weren't that big, so like we're walking to our garage right here, like she's literally like, she's 10 feet right there, you know, on her porch yelling at us. I mean, did she miss a day? Yeah, maybe, but she was
still, man. Yeah.
And it was crazy, man. I got so used to it. It's kind of like, it is what it is at a certain point. And like, it's almost like I became numb to like hearing like people's like experience. I'm like, look, man, like, you know, at least they're keeping it real with you how they are. Because I have other experiences when people didn't keep it real with you, and you find out the hard way when you think you could depend on somebody or something like that, or you think it's gonna be one way. But when I tell you, I heard it virtually every day.
Listen to me. Being where I'm from, and I'm speaking from my wife as well. If we lived in that environment, and that happened to our child walking to school or out to, there would literally be the police would be called and somebody would be laid out. It's gonna be that lady, or she gonna shoot one of us. Like, it's gonna be an incident. Right. The first time she says some shit like that, it's gonna be an incident. Cause she's gonna learn you can feel how you want to feel, but you're not spitting it at us.
Right.
You're not gonna step on your porch and talk to my kids crazy. It would have been nipped in the bud immediately. I don't care how many times the cops would have had to come. It eventually would probably lead to something bad. Her getting hurt, us getting hurt, but that's just my mindset. That's why I tell you, I can't live in the South. I won't be able to function. Something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't. What happened to me, I don't think that even happens in the South. That was like my case. When I tell you, I wish I had my mom here to tell you about the story. Like when I say it was, and like I said, it wasn't like I was 3 years old. I was of age to know what was going on.
Yeah, no,
you know,
nah, B, no,
yeah. Like, it was, like looking back on it, like, you know, it's like I said, it's good and bad. It's good in the sense where I wasn't a sensitive kid anyway. Now, even more so now, when I hear about if like something like minor happens, I'm like, look, man, like, you know, fuck it. It is what it is. Like, you know, we gotta keep it moving. Like, you know,
yeah.
Like, you know, and there's power in both. And I knew if something had happened, it was gonna be a losing battle.
Sure,
like, you know,
the police are gonna come take her side and make your parents the bad people, and Your dad was probably going to go to jail or spend a night in jail because of him responding. But like I said, where I'm from, it's not going down. The person is going to be taught not to do that. That's not okay. Right. You're not going to balk that at my kids, because I don't want that seeping into their psyche as they grow up as young people, thinking or feeling that these ladies' words actually have a meaning or meaning. Obviously, you have to talk to your kids separate from that. But nah, man, like, stand up. No, hell no, that's not going down.
Yeah, it is crazy because like now that I look back on it, it's amazing how me or my sister, we didn't come out of that experience like being racist or like being bigoted toward white people. I still got like, friends who don't look like me, the whole 9 yards. Right. I mean, and then plus I played baseball, and like, playing baseball is
very white sport.
Exactly. Especially the further up you go.
Sure.
It's weird. You go from being mostly white kids and travel ball, stuff like that. You get the pro balls, a bunch of Dominicans and Venezuelans.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, because they ball.
Yeah. So like, there's people who look like you, but you're still treated differently.
Right.
Because it's not like the Dominicans and Puerto Ricans who grew up in New York. They're coming straight from the island.
Exactly.
So they're the ones who
minimal
say,
English.
Exactly, and they're the ones who say, I'm not black, I'm Dominican. It's those types.
They don't want that education, but somebody needs to educate them.
Right. Yeah. True.
Yep.
All right, so one of the things I like to do, so I try to connect everything back to real estate. So with the podcast being called Real Estate Controls Everything Around Me, I always tell people to see if you can give me 3 places that mean a lot to you, whether old high school, your old block where you grew up, maybe the first venue you performed at, just something that means a lot to you and why.
So the first place I would say, it's within my housing project. It's called Howard Park. I live in Howard houses, but there was a park, the Howard Park, which is where that was kind of like the first true hip hop influences happened for me, because that's where the jams would happen at. There was a couple local DJs that would come and bring the equipment out and play on the basketball court. What makes that place even more special is, before the equipment got brought out and the music got turned on, there were actually basketball games being played with NBA players like, World Be Free and Pearl Washington.
Yep. Syracuse.
From Syracuse. Those type of guys were playing in Howard Park, like full courts. And I wasn't really a basketball guy, but 3 or 4 guys that were in the league. A guy with the last name Sellers. Can't remember his first name. Sellers.
Brad
Sellers.
Yeah.
So you got all these big time players, NBA guys, playing ball against each other in Howard Park. And when those games would happen, now you got Rolls Royces pulling up along the park line, and then you got, heavyweight champion Eddie Gregory getting out of the car to walk over to watch the game. Like, I see all of this right there in Howard Park, and so that's definitely the first place that I would mention. Second place I would mention would be my address when I was in high school, 7 East 17th Street, which is in Flatbush section of Brooklyn. People don't know, after Brownsville, when I got to 10th grade, I permanently moved to Flatbush with my mother, and our address was 7 East 17th. And those high school years were probably some of the most influential years, but living in that home, because that's the last time that me and my mother lived together, right, was when I was living at that address. After that, she moved to Virginia. I got my own place. We never lived together again. So that address holds I hold that near and dear to my heart. So that's the second place. Third place, 3000 Avenue X. That was the address of my high school, Sheepshead Bay High School, way down in the southern part of Brooklyn, New York. I had to take 2 buses to get out there. It was either 2 buses or a train and a bus.
What neighborhood is that?
It's Sheepshead Bay. The actual neighborhood is called Sheepshead Bay. Very long way from Brownsville. I did an entire album, The Falling Season, based on or about my experience in high school, at that address, going there for 4 years straight, and what it was like traveling on the bus to get to school, what it was like at that school, growing up in a school that was probably 65% white when I first got there. Eventually it became more like 50-50, but those years are the formidable years. Those are the years that meant the most in terms of my development as a young man. And so I point to that address as my third location.
No, 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 no.
Real estate controls
Everything around me.